you will die. These stalwarts and many others have longed to see this day, and I have no doubt that wherever they are today, they are smiling in the knowledge that we have not betrayed their cause. Bayalilizela lapho bekhona bathi malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi, malibongwe. Honorable members, let me comment on some arguments advanced against this bill. Constitutionality of the bill. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa under the Bill of Rights states that equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. To promote equality, legislative and other measures designed to protect and advance persons or categories of persons disadvantaged by unfair discrimination, duplication of other laws, and Commission for Gender Equality. Those who cry duplication have failed to indicate specifically where this duplication is, except for making wide references to legislation. The bill does not seek to duplicate existing legislation. Furthermore, it will ensure that women are prioritized in various acts. The bill also, the ministry's mandate and that of the Commission for Gender Equality, if anything, giving greater opportunity to work together to advance gender equality. The Wedgie Bill fights for the progressive realization of at least 50% representation of women in decision-making structures. The minority within this House has chosen to ignore two key words, progressive realization. Instead, wrongly state that the bill is a top-down manipulation to achieve equality. Quite clearly, they do not want women empowered in this country. It is regrettable that women's poverty remains the central manifestation and a direct result of lack of social, economic, and political power, which reinforce the subordination and constraints that women should enjoy. Fortunately, the ANC is the only political party to do so, adopted the 50-50 representation of women in all its structures and in all levels of society. The 50% gender parity policy that is articulated in the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill is being debated here today. It is because of the ANC government that we have 44% women parliamentarians and 42% cabinet ministers.
Honorable Minister, there's a point of
Is
order.
the Honourable Minister prepared to take an easy question?
No, the women are waiting. They don't want to waste time.
No,
It's an
Before
easy
they
question,
enjoy
very
their
I won't
easy.
take your
freedom.
question. Honorable Minister, try and round up.
It is because of the ANC's commitment to women empowerment and gender equality that today we have 44% women parliamentarians in this House and 42% cabinet ministers, thanks to the political will and leadership of President Jacob Zuma and the African National Congress. The ANC supports this bill. Sincane isikhathi ngisazobuya futhi.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Can I request that members in the gallery don't participate in the debate? That includes clapping or responding to what is happening in the House. We know you can be excited, but it doesn't necessarily mean you must participate actively. You participate by listening. Thank you very much. Honorable Ramotibe.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, ngiyanibingelela lapho phezulu abomama. Indeed, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the government of the African National Congress has yet another good story to tell. to the people of South Africa, in particular women. That story is the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill, which we will pass today, hopefully with the support of the DA, although I cannot bet on that. With this bill, the ANC government moves South Africa forward, so close to one of the ideals of a national democratic society, a society whose values were captured by the former president of Mozambique, the late Comrade Samora Machel, when he said, "The emancipation of women is not an act of charity, the result of a humanitarian or compassionate attitude. The liberation of women is a fundamental necessity for the revolution, the guarantee of its continuity and the precondition for its victory. The main objective of the revolution is to destroy the system of exploitation and build a new society which will release the potentialities of human beings." Madam Speaker, the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill is aimed at, among others, ensuring that women have equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. It also seeks to promote gender equality as well as to ensure that all the country's commitments to the international community are complied with. The bill also aims to provide for the implementation of measures to achieve progressive realization of a minimum of 50% representation and meaningful participation of women in decision-making positions and structures, including boards by designated public bodies and designated private bodies. The bill puts aid once and for all to the myth that the women's place is in the kitchen. With this bill, the ANC government is saying the boardroom is as much as a woman's place as any other place in South Africa. The Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill proposes a number of measures whose purpose will be to mainstream and institutionalize women equality and gender equality. In this regard, the bill takes cognizance of the ANC long-held view, which asserts that interventions aimed at eliminating gender inequality need to be institutionally enforced, precisely because patriarchal oppression was embedded in the economic, social, religious, cultural, family, and other relations in all communities. Its eradication cannot be an assumed consequence of democracy. All manifestations of patriarchy, from the feminization of poverty, physical and psychological abuse, undermining of self-confidence, to open and hidden forms of exclusion from position of authority and power, need to be eliminated. The bill empowers the minister with the necessary governance authority to monitor, review, and oversee gender mainstreaming, the promotion of women empowerment and equal representation, and meaningful participation of women in all decision-making positions and structure. Madam Deputy Speaker, the above will enable the protection and advancement of women and girl children as instructed by the Equality Clause of Section 9, subsection 2 of the Constitution, through public education on prohibited practices that discriminate on the grounds of gender. With this bill, we will educate the boy child that it is not cool to discriminate against the girl child. We will raise the consciousness of men for them to understand and appreciate that women have a right to walk freely, follow their aspirations freely, and contribute to society as equals. Through this bill, the ANC government will support and reinforce the rights and remedies contained in applicable legislation, policies, and mechanisms on the empowerment of women and promotion of gender equality. Madam Deputy Speaker, as the ANC government, we have over the past 20 years enacted legislation which seeks to empower women as well as to combat and eliminate gender-based violence. With the support of patriotic parties other than the DA, we sought to make the lives of women better. We have heard our people when they say this is not enough. Now we are moving South Africa forward. We are reinforcing the rights and the remedies. The bill enhances the capacity for the implementation of the applicable legislation through development of integrated strategies, frameworks, programs, plans, activities, and budgets, which aim to eliminate structural and systematic inequalities and to enable women to gain power and control over decisions and resources that determine the quality of their lives in a sustainable manner. Madam Deputy Speaker, how can a party not support such an empowering and enabling objective for the struggle of women? Women of South Africa, judge for yourselves who has your best interest at heart and decide what to do on May the 7th, 2014. DA, your days are numbered. The bill provides a legal framework for advancing, developing, promoting, and protecting the rights of women through capacity building and training, lobbying, advocacy, and awareness raising, empowerment, and monitoring of compliance by all entities. The bill enables the work of facilitating capacity building and the development of strategies for the implementation of gender mainstreaming and gender budgeting. Madam Deputy Speaker, in this regard, the bill moves forward with the struggle for mainstreaming and institutionalizing of women empowerment and gender equality. In supporting this bill, the ANC takes its cue from the President of the Republic of South Africa and the only president whose party will move South Africa forward. That is President Jacob Zuma. In his address at the National Women's Day celebrations on August 9, 2009, the President magnified the Department of Women and Children and People with Disabilities role, stating that the ministry will monitor other government departments to ensure the mainstreaming of gender, children's rights, and disability considerations into all programs of government and other sectors. The President reiterated in his State of the Nation address in February 2010 the need to integrate gender equity measures into government programs of action to ensure that women, children, and people with disability can access developmental opportunities. Finally, the legal framework of this bill enables facilitating compliance, quality, and timeless reporting on the country's commitments to international treaties and the prohibition of all forms of practices with adverse effects on women. Women of South Africa, the ANC government will not stand by when women are abused, violated, and brutally raped. We will support this bill because it advances the struggle for the prohibition of all these evil practices. We wait to hear what the DA will say. Yet we have now become familiar with their hypocrisy. They will say they support the idea of women empowerment and then find a thin veiled excuses not to support this progressive piece of legislation. That is what they stand for. The ANC is moving the struggle for the women in rural areas and girl children forward. The existing legislation on women empowerment and gender equality faces two related challenges. These are lack of implementation of existing policies because of ignorance of their existence, as well as concerns about lack of enforcement of existing legislation. This particular bill addresses both these concerns. With regard to public education, the bill provides for public education and awareness to address discriminatory practices and to empower women to meaningful participation in the economy. The bill also provides that the minister may intervene to enhance the public education programs by the designated companies. Insofar as enforcement is concerned, the revised version of the bill provides for punitive measures for non-compliance by the private sector, among others. In this regard, these companies may be fined as much as 10% of the annual turnover and/or imprisonment. There is also a provision for the minister to name and shame the culprits who fail to comply. The DA, when the bill first came, they said the bill does not have teeth. When the bill was amended to include enforcement, they said the teeth are biting too hard, the teeth are very sharp. This bill lays a solid foundation for the inclusion of women into the mainstream economy, where they can participate meaningful through ownership of significant stakes on an equitable basis with their male counterparts. As I conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to tell the women of South Africa that they should not be deceived by the DA, because the DA is only there to protect the wealth of the richest. We are reminded of the words
Order, honorable
of a
member,
man
order.
who needs no introduction, Tata Nelson Mandela, when he said, "Freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression." Our endeavors must be about the liberation of women, the emancipation of the men, and the liberty of the child. Madam Deputy Speaker, the committee recommends the bill to the House for adoption, and I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Lamula.
Deputy Speaker, and good morning to all our guests in the gallery. Welcome. When this bill was introduced to the committee in November 2013, I realized that although noble of intent, aiming to give effect to the letter and spirit of our Constitution regarding the equal enjoyment of all rights and freedom by every person, the constitutionality and feasibility of the bill is of great concern. Although continuously mentioned during public submissions and deliberations, the Department of Women, Children and People with Disability was in complete denial about the fact that this bill intrudes on the constitutional mandate of the important Chapter 9 institution, the Commission of Gender Equality. The Constitution states that the CGE has the power to monitor, investigate, research, educate, lobby, advise, and report on issues concerning gender equality. The powers of the CGE are further expanded in the Commission of Gender Equality Act 39 of 1996. The bill does not only override, and the Minister mentioned this, but it does override the mandate of the CGE, but also duplicates some provisions in a host of other acts, including Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination, Employment Equity Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Broad-Based Economic Empowerment Act, and the Human Rights Act. The issue of the duplication of legislation was mentioned by 37 of the 41 public submissions heard by this committee. The Legal Resources Centre had the following to say in their submissions, and I quote, "We emphasize the need for an approach that sees the harmonization of the interventions between public bodies in order to achieve gender equality. This is currently sorely absent in the implementation of government policies and plans," quote, close quote. Even the Green Paper produced in preparation for this bill called on the Ministry to coordinate a comprehensive process for reviewing and assessing current legislation and policy. Deputy Speaker, we need to know why existing pieces of legislation and policy are silent on unresponsive to gender-based challenges on all levels. We also need to know why existing pieces of legislation, and it's too late to mention it today that it will be implemented, are not being implemented effectively. For instance, the Domestic Violence Act. How will the women of South Africa benefit from another piece of legislation that does not address the real issues and that cannot be implemented? When asked which research informed this bill, the department pointed to a Stats SA report that showed women are vulnerable and in need of an intervention. The Democratic Alliance acknowledges that women of South Africa are vulnerable. But it is not the women climbing the corporate ladder who needs the intervention. Also not the backbenchers in the ANC who by heckling and hands-clapping earn big salaries and hardly contribute in holding the department to account. The Stats SA report
Order,
was
Mr.
clear
Speaker.
that the women bear the
Order.
brunt of poverty in
There's
our
a
communities.
point of order.
And that they
Honourable member.
disproportionately carry the burden of
Honourable
care
Lamla.
for children, old people, and the
Honourable
sick in
member.
their communities.
There's a point of order. What's your point of order?
The point of order, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is that you've requested that the people on the gallery should stop participating in the debates,
Wasting my time.
and
Sit
they
down.
still
Sit
continue
down.
to do so.
Sit down.
Can
Okay.
you please roll on this matter? Thank you.
Speaker, there are a number of issues to be addressed. We need a comprehensive audit of existing legislation to identify where the gaps are. Only then can we discuss the need for further legislation. We need to know why crucial pieces of legislation are not sufficiently implemented and what can be done to ensure that their objectives are realized. We need to address root causes of inequality and disempowerment. We need to recognize women's unpaid labor and acknowledge that women do the bulk of care and housework within their communities. We must ensure that our schooling system adequately prepares all young people for the demands of a modern economy. Ensure that learners do not drop out of school at the age of 14 and 12 and 16, and that sufficient funds are available for post-school education and training. We need to protect women, girls, and sexual minorities from violence. Empowerment means nothing if people are scared to walk in the streets. And despite a law to combat this, live in fear of their domestic partners. We need to stop the scourge of teenage pregnancies. Teenage pregnancies trap so many girls and their children in permanent dependency and degrading poverty, often accompanied by sexual violence. We need to intervene in cases where fathers leave mothers to fend for kids all on their own, to stop the popgeld dads who go on the run. And we need to expand Operation Isondlo, launched in 2005 to help decrease the backlog of maintenance defaulters. And Deputy Speaker, today I want to call on you that we need to start at the ancient rule of powers and privileges of the Parliament Act that prohibits any MP to be served a summons to be arrested on the precincts, especially when maintenance for women and children is at stake. Only if these interventions will change the life, only if these kinds of interventions will change the lives of people like Viseka Isintinga, a Dunoon mother of two, whose only income is the child grant she receives. And she quote, "It is not nice having to depend on government to put food on your table." She said she had tried applying for jobs, but having only passed grade 9 and could not even find a cleaning job. "The fathers of my children tell me they too are unemployed, so they can't help me." And so the struggle goes on and on and on. Speaker, the department routinely complains of financial and capacity constraints. It is therefore hard to understand how the department will be able to work with and monitor individual designated bodies in addition to achieving its annual monitoring and evaluation targets. The annual report of 2012-13 reflected the extent to which this department is failing to achieve modest monitoring and evaluating outcomes, even before the implementation of the bill. This department only achieved 10 out of 16 targets set for monitoring and evaluation of sub-programs. Should reporting on gender empowerment that currently falls under the Employment Equity Act be moved to this department, the advances the Department of Labour have made in over a decade will be lost. Not to mention bring back the problems reporting faced in the early 2000s. It is thus doubtful that the understaffed and underskilled department, infested with skewed spending patterns, will be able to do a better job than the Department of Labour. The Department of Women, Children and People with Disabilities has let the women of South Africa down. This bill is a lifeline to a department that has failed to identify the true barriers to empowerment and has failed to coordinate a government with effort to address these barriers.
Thank you, Honourable Lamula. Your time is up.
Approach to gender representation.
Thank
is
you,
confusing
Honourable
and
Member. Your time
unclear,
is up.
As once again, the quota list of the ANC
Honourable
stopped
Member,
by
your
mail,
time is up.
And the
Honourable
Women's League
Member, your time is
cannot
up.
reappoint a woman for president. Thank you.
Honourable Mosmani.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members. Women political rights are relegated to the back burner in all political parties. Gender equality, on the other hand, is reduced to representations. In government, in other instances, that represent is zero. The question that begs an answer is whether those few women in leadership positions are taken seriously by their counterparts. Do they really make decisions or take decisions made by their counterparts and run with them? Political rights of women, like all the citizens in our land, are enshrined in Section 19 of the Constitution, but fewer women occupy leadership positions. In South Africa, we have been reading comments, especially from women leaders, on how South Africa is not ready for a woman president. This is in total contrast to the women of 1956 vision and mission. This argument is not supported by what is happening internationally. Clause 7 of this bill speaks against domination of the majority by the minority in all spheres of life. In South Africa, 52% women are dominated by a mere 48% of men. What is wrong for wanting to correct that? Why is it politically incorrect in South Africa to have 50% representation in a constitutional democracy, while in Nairobi, Kenya, more than 400 young women drawn from various political parties held a demonstration to petition the register of the political parties and Justice Minister to ensure that at least 50% of all elective and appointive positions are allocated to them. According to the principal state law advisor, there is no right in the Constitution that is absolute. COPE would like to remind the House that, according to Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights applies to all and binds the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and all organs of state. This includes, amongst other fields, the addressing and redressing of gender disparities in the academic landscape of our country, which is still male-dominated. COPE support the bill. I thank you.
Honorable van der Merwe.
Madam Speaker, before you continue, I'll ask, I'm not comfortable, there's a member in the gallery standing there.
Can you continue, Honorable van der Merwe?
Speaker,
Can,
this van der Merwe.
yes, you want to speak about women? Yes, you can
Yes,
speak. But
yes, you referred to somebody in the gallery. I think that person wanted to shout, the ANC has a bad story.
Honorable van der Merwe, can you be serious? Can we call for order? Whoever is standing in the gallery, please. Continue, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, at the outset of this debate, it is important to note that the aims and objectives of the Women's Empowerment and Gender Equity Bill, also known as the Wedgie Bill, are laudable and should be commended. Wedgie enters into a legal landscape abounding with legislation aimed at protecting our women. The primary obstacle to women empowerment and gender equity, therefore, is not the absence of legislation. Rather, it is the poor implementation of our legislation. In particular, we must ask the question why existing legislation and why existing bodies, such as the Commission for Gender Equality, have not been successful in their aims and objectives. But even putting aside this fundamental question, let us look at the facts. Currently, despite making up 43% of the economically active population, women are still chronically underrepresented in positions in private and public sector, in senior positions. According to the 2012 Women in Leadership Census, women in South Africa constitute only 17% of all directors and a mere 3.6% of CEOs. Research by Forbes has also shown that companies that have women well represented at senior levels perform better than those who do not. This builds the case that women do make a valuable contribution at decision-making levels. However, despite agreeing wholeheartedly with this notion, the IFP has concerns with aspects of the bill that make women's empowerment through this legislation potentially unattainable. The bill requires that designated public bodies and designated private bodies to achieve a minimum of 50% representation of women in decision-making structures. Following the submission by these designated bodies of their plans of actions to the Minister, failure to comply with this legislation will have consequences either in the form of a fine or imprisonment. Yet, in a court case, Minister of Finance and another, versus Van Heerden in 2004, the Constitutional Court pointed out that achievement of equality goes to the bedrock of our constitutional architecture and preoccupies our constitutional thinking. However, our courts have emphasized that rigid quotas on headcounts and blanket exclusions on the grounds of race and gender are unlikely to withstand constitutional judicial scrutiny. Also, WEGI does not make provision for the sheer logistics and added capacity which would be required to implement this law. It must also be said the way in which public submissions were largely dismissed by the Department of Women and Children and People with Disabilities are disconcerting. Inputs at committee level at times met the same fate. But the question remains, will WEGI translate into greater empowerment and equity for our women? Colleagues, it stands to reason that this legislation will do very well in empowering those lucky few who are already in public and private institutions. Yet we are still to address the root causes as to why women are not climbing the career pipeline. The poor quality of our education system, for example, which does not empower our young women, remains unaddressed. Today, as a multi-party democracy representing a multitude of voices, it is imperative that we sing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to critical issues like gender equality. We have done so in our committee, and I would therefore like to thank my colleagues in our committee, especially the Honourable Helen Lamula. And for despite our differences, we continue to share the dream of improving the lives of ordinary women in our country. I would also like to thank our committee stalwarts, Crystal Levendal, Kashifa Abrams, Lorenzo Wakefield, Laliswa Nobatanda, and our legal guru, Mr. Gary Roda. In closing, Honourable Deputy Speaker, despite passing this legislation today, the reality is that for many women in South Africa, the constitutional ideals of equality, transformation, and empowerment remains a pipe dream. I thank you.
Honorable Mulder.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, let me start off by stating quite clearly and unequivocally that the Freedom Front Plus is against any form of discrimination against women. We can never support that. We believe in absolute equality between men and women as a point of departure, and I think everybody in this House believes in that. However, the Minister started off by telling us that this is another good story to tell. And we are getting tired of all the so-called good stories, because the problem is this, and this goes beyond the bill. The ANC has a very sad and bad story to tell since 1994. And the reason for that is the following. The ANC failed to unlock the enormous potential in South Africa between all the people in this country, men, women, from all creeds, color, all different groups. You did not succeed in getting those energy going to make this country a better place. And now you're trying with all kinds of things to improve South Africa. Let's get to this bill. The Honourable Chairperson of the committee, the Honourable Ramodike, said basically that this bill will now help to make it possible to teach a boy child to respect women and children and girls. You don't need legislation to teach your children the basics of life.
Point of order. Madam Deputy Speaker.
There's a point of order.
From here,
Yes.
I'm not Ramodike, I'm Ramudibe.
That's good.
I'm not Ramodike.
That's
Corrected.
I continue. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. You don't need legislation to teach your child the basics of life to respect women. You don't need legislation to do that. Just do it. You see, Chairperson, there are certain things in life that you cannot do. You can legislate tomorrow to say the sun should rise in the north and set in the south. It won't happen. Let's look at a few women who did
Point
get
of
to
order,
the top.
Deputy Speaker. I just want to ask if the member is ready to take your question.
Honourable Chairperson, I'm absolutely ready, but you must understand you gave me 3 minutes to speak. I've got 1 minute and 20 seconds left. If you don't deduct from my time, I'll gladly answer your question.
Continue, Honourable Member. Continue.
I should continue. Thank you. The Honourable Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma reached the top of the African Union. Yes. Yes.
Order, Honourable Members. Please.
Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi is in a very senior position in the United Nations. Maria Ramos is in a very senior position in Barclays Africa. Did they attain those things on merit or because of a quota? No, they got there because of merit. When this bill goes through, we will have women in positions on quota, not because of merit. Now, the Honourable Minister should think tonight when she goes home, is she a quota minister or is she a merit minister? I wonder, I really wonder, she should know. That's the kind of thing where we are going. The problem, Chairperson, is that this bill is trying to do the impossible. The ANC is rushing this through Parliament, it's rushing it through the system. You cannot legislate certain things that should be normal and should be in the hearts and minds of South Africans out there. The Honourable Lamula exactly said, what are the real issues and challenges facing women out there? But you are not addressing those. You are not addressing those. You are busy with window dressing. I wanted to ask the Minister a question. She was not prepared to answer. Now let me ask her the question now. You said to the House just now that the ANC is the only party that has a 50-50% throughout their structures. Now, Honourable Minister, is that the truth? Is that the correct position when you look at your national list as from position number 1? Or don't you have 50-50 until after the first 80 positions, Honourable Minister? I will wait for your response when you reply to the debate. Thank you very much.
Honourable Dade.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The ACDP is acutely aware of the struggles women have faced throughout the ages and the struggles far too many still face today. We know that it is extremely important to ensure that women have the protection and support they need, and we commend the objectives of this bill to promote gender equality and to empower women. The ACDP was, like many others, very concerned about the threat that the bill in its original form posed to religious freedom and the autonomy of religious and charitable organizations to govern their own affairs. Given the broad definition of private bodies to whom the Act would apply, this would have included churches and religious or charitable organizations. The ACDP, on behalf of many organizations, including those that made oral representations to the committee, commends and extends its gratitude to the Portfolio Committee, to the Department, and to the Minister who really did listen and apply their minds to the submissions on this issue, for amending the bill to exclude public benefit organizations from the application of the Act. We believe that much of the potential harm that could have resulted from this legislation has now been averted, that religious organizations will no longer be forced to exercise a choice between obeying their faith and obeying the law, and that this is a victory for democracy. The ACDP still questions, however, whether South Africa really needs additional equity legislation or a greater commitment to implementing existing laws. During the public hearings, although for very different reasons, none of the presentations that I heard were actually in favor of this legislation, and all appealed for the Minister to go back and consult more widely. Gender groups were particularly offended and did not see this legislation addressing any of what they understood to be the real concerns. Business also expressed grave concerns, not to mention political parties. During the Portfolio Committee deliberations, the Department assured members that this legislation called for plans only and that businesses would not be expected to comply with targets overnight. Designated bodies would have a year in which to submit a plan on gender education, etc., etc. These plans would set new targets where necessary for progressive implementation and give reasons why this is necessary. Despite these explanations, the ACDP is still apprehensive about the broad powers given to the Minister in this bill to interfere in the affairs of private business and political parties. No disrespect to the Minister is intended, but apart from broad powers being a concern, this department is not a department that is geared to addressing the needs of business and entrepreneurial initiatives, which are vital to the development and success of our country and will impact enormously on the quality of life of women. The ACDP previously pointed out that the original draft would most likely attract a constitutional challenge, which would be costly, wasting time and money, while achieving very little. Changes to the bill, in our opinion, have significantly lessened potential anomalies. However, we are not convinced that it will stand in the face of a constitutional challenge, and this is problematic. For these reasons, the ACDP will not be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Honorable Tsake.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, guests in the gallery. Honorable Lamola, let me start with you. You were just making a lot of noise, but not telling the public about the advantages of this bill, because you are representing the voices of the few. The ANC, with or without you, will pass this bill. Dingwaga di le masome a mabedi tsa kgololesego mo nageng ya rona di tlisitse diphetogo tse dintsi mo matshelong a maAforika Borwa. Bomme ba ne ba gateletswe thata mo dingwageng tse di fetileng ke ka moo re le puso e eteletseng pele ke mokgatlho wa batho, mokgatlho o tseyang tsia dikgatlhego tsa batho, mokgatlho o tseyang tsia dikgatlhego tsa bomme ba ba leng kwa metseselegaeng, bomme ka kakaretso, bana ba basetsana o tlileng ka molaokakanywa o gore matshelo a bona a fetoge. Gompieno re le ntlogolo ya bosetšhaba re tla fetisa molaokakanywa o netefatsang ebile o bona gore ditokelo tsa bomme le bontate mo nageng ya rona di a lekanwa le gore bomme ba tseye karolo mo ikonoming ya naga. Honorable Deputy Speaker, over the past 20 years, the ANC government has put in place legislations and protocols to fight gender-based violence. We cannot have gender-based violence as part of our heritage under the ANC government. Our girl children would never be proud to inherit and have to pass on this legacy from us as their forebears. For as long as gender-based violence continues, we cannot proudly celebrate the values of equality, which is enshrined in the Constitution, much as we cannot proudly celebrate our freedom in the face of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The Women Empowerment and Gender Equality, commonly known as the WEDGE Bill, provides for a legal framework to deal with both of the above constraints which inhibit the full potential of women. The bill compels designated private and public bodies, among others, to develop and implement plans and measures to educate the public on practices that unfairly discriminate on the grounds of gender, including gender-based violence. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the bill presents an opportunity for the public to mobilize and educate the boy child and the girl child on the one hand, and patriarchy on the other hand, that the place of the girl child and that of the woman is everywhere, including in leadership of corporate society, political parties, and in the academia. The boy child must not be socialized into believing that he has a right over the woman's body. People's sexual orientation cannot be a basis for their vilification and humiliation. 32 years after they were uttered, the words of the late former ANC President Oliver Tambo still rings true when he said, I open quotes, the mobilization of women is the task not only of women alone or of men alone, but of all of us, men and women alike, comrades in the struggle, close quotes. I'm referring to the honorable members on my right side. Honorable members, the above-mentioned provision on public education and prohibited practices, including gender-based violence, will also enable enforcement on previously adopted legislation on measures to eliminate gender-based violence. In this regard, the bill is addressing the genuine concerns which were expressed by advocacy groups which have the genuine interest of women and lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender at heart. These concerns relate to the observation that despite the good legislation that have been championed and initiated by the ANC on gender equality and combat against gender-based violence, there are still huge gaps in implementation. The ANC government had had these concerns, and through this bill, we have addressed them. Honorable Deputy Speaker and honorable members, the bill moves the struggle for the economic emancipation of women forward. The ANC-led government acknowledged that women who are occupying strategic positions in government and public sector are specifically those from previously disadvantaged communities. But this is not enough. Hence, Clause 10 on economic empowerment provides that despite any other law, targets for women in all laws and policies on economic empowerment shall be at least 50%. This opens the way for the enforcement of the equality principle of the Constitution, namely Section 9, subsection 2, for those private businesses and similar public institutions which regard executive positions and ownership stakes as the exclusive preserve of white men in the main. Of course, honorable members, the DA is opposed to this provision because it touches the business interest, their holy cow. The DA strategy is all too familiar by now. They raise points of objection to a piece of legislation, and they will never concede to these sincere attempts by the ANC and the progressive opposition to engage and address objections. Only the DA can persuade the DA to admit to a rational and persuasive view of the ANC. So once they disagree, that is it. For them, it's okay, because they don't represent the majority view. Of course, we know that this is a thinly veiled ploy to protect the interest of a big business. They cannot accept that the private sector should be held accountable for the serious lack of strategies and plans for women empowerment, in particular, those from previously disadvantaged background. The DA raised objections which relates to what is perceived to be a duplication of the mandate of the CGE, particularly as it relates to monitoring, evaluation, and public education. The ANC has responded to this objection at every turn, stating that the mere reference to monitoring and evaluation, for instance, does not in itself suggest duplication. Monitoring and evaluation of the CGE is different to the overall oversight, monitoring, and evaluation role of the department. The ANC has also repeatedly made the point that Cabinet would not have approved this bill if perceptions of duplications of mandate were justified. Honorable members, the DA also argued that the bills lack strong enforcement. One asks herself a question to say, what is it that they are doing as members of parliament? And as a reminder, your task, Honorable Lamula, is to conduct oversight over this department. It is funny that the DA is speaking the very same language as those people who have submitted, who have made submissions in our portfolio committee. And this leaves us with a question mark. We took them seriously and forgetting for a while that they are merely play games with important national issues. We made amendments and included strong enforcement. Thus, in clause 17 of the bill, we inserted the clause which states that a designated body which fails to comply with the relevant provision of this act, including failure to comply with a request by the minister in terms of section 16, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 10% of the annual turnover of that designated private body. And further, a director or a CEO of a designated private body, as the case may be, fined in terms of paragraph A above, is liable on conviction of that designated private body to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 5 years. Of course, DA is opposed to these enforcement measures. Listen to what they were saying. The sanctions in this bill, yes, are too harsh, and a bill of this nature should rather incentivize behavior in order to facilitate compliance. You see, now they changed the text. That's what happened with the DA when the ANC makes private sector accountable to the people of South Africa. Honorable members, there have been other objections to which the ANC has responded in detail. But what they are doing is just score political, cheap political points. We have been reasonable, and we are reasonable enough that we have accommodated them even after raising petty issues that will not assist us in moving South Africa forward. In conclusion, the history of the struggle of a democratic, non-racial, and non-sexist South Africa would be incomplete without the names of Charlotte Matkaike, Lillian Gowie, Helen Joseph, Sophia de Bruyn, and many other women, too numerous to mention, who contributed immensely, sometimes by paying an ultimate price, to bring about the freedom that we all enjoy. We must never forget our heroes and heroines. They have bequeathed to us the heritage of the democracy that we have enjoyed. Let us remember them on the 7th of May, 2014. The ANC will support this bill.
Honorable Bula.
Madam Deputy Speaker, women make up more than 50% of the population of this country. It is logical then that they should at a minimum hold 50% of the positions in the public and private sector. Sadly enough, this is not the case. I want to applaud the African National Congress for prioritizing women empowerment by being the only party that adheres to the 50-50 policy. Unlike the DA, who packs a provincial cabinet up with white males, they must not play to the gallery, come and blow their hot air here.
Deputy Speaker, I would like to know whether the Honourable Sweeper of the ANC will take a question.
Mr. Pula, Honorable Pula, can you take the question?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I remain a respected member of the MF, and I will take a question from the lost and found ID at the end.
Sit down.
They must not come and play to the gallery, blow their hot air about inequality. This is hypocritical. Apartheid activist Veljama Modley died in prison at the age of 99 and refused to bow down to oppression and lose her self-respect. Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the ID, I assure you that when the MF doubles its representation on the 7th of May, we will adhere to the 50-50 policy. While substantial progress has been made since apartheid, more needs to be done to ensure that we advance the principles of equality. Currently, only 28% of top positions are held by women, and 63% of rural women remain unemployed. These are the staggering statistics, and indeed the MF treasures the hope that this bill will address the inequality.
Madam Deputy Speaker.
Is that a point of order?
No, I want to know if the Honourable Member would take a question. That's why I tried to take
No.
Mrs. Rajbansi's job if he's so impressed with women empowerment.
Can you continue, Honorable Member?
The DA remains intimidated. We applaud the foresight illustrated by the Minister because transformation is not only about numbers. We must not simply parachute women into senior management positions. Attitude, policies, and perceptions need to be changed from the grassroots so that this bill benefits all South African women, not just the elite exclusively. The focus on the education and health sectors is crucial. As President Zuma alluded, education is a ladder out of poverty, and the MF agrees. The MF welcomes the emphasis placed on the high dropout rate by teenage mothers and the re-entry into the education fraternity. I am reminded here of the old saying, if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. The additional focus on women's health is crucial. However, we register a concern with phrase section 5A, which must its available resources. What is meant by available resources? Does this mean that if a health faculty in the rural area does not have the available resources, that this law is not incumbent upon them? We request that the amendments be made to make it mandatory, while simultaneously synchronizing all levels of government to ensure that we develop and implement a model for delivering women's health in rural areas. We additionally welcome the inclusion of public education in gender-based violence. Not a single day passes without news of rapes and other crimes against women. We must identify clear strategies that are relevant to communities so that we can end the scourge on violence. The focus placed on the economic empowerment of women and disabilities is commendable. However, right here in the Western Cape, the DA-led government offers the dial-a-ride service. The waiting list is in excess to 2 years. Is this the constitutionality and the feasibility that you come here to talk about today? Why the DA selectively will choose to undermine legislation promulgated by national level? The answer is very, very simple. What a sad story. They have no empathy to address concerns of the suffering masses. The Minority Front requests that it is made compulsory for all such bodies, public and private, including the DA, to submit their plans and measures to the ministry. However, the terminology may not be required, is inappropriate, and the MF calls for it to be mandatory. Let us always be reminded that women are the backbone of society, and indeed, Nkosazana's Dlamini Zuma is a great advantage for a country. All the women of the world, remember MF. Not only does it mean magnificent females, but equally it means
Honorable Member, your
must
time is up.
fight for poverty and equality. I thank you, and the MF will support the bill.
Honorable Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, guests, you're welcome. The DA strongly supports the empowerment of women, but we believe that this bill will not bring any change to the lives of millions of women who are unemployed and who are bearing the brunt of poverty day in and day out. This bill is another sad story of more talk and promises and less action by the government. The wage bill does very little for rural women, women with disabilities, women who earn money through informal trading, women exposed to violence, women who are failed by the justice system, sex workers, and the LGBTI. The list is very long. There have been talk of the other bills in the pipeline, bills on Muslim marriages, sex work, hate crimes, but to date, none of these have reached this House. Instead, the ANC pursued the traditional courts bill, which violates basic rights of particularly rural women, another indication that this government is not truly interested in real women empowerment. The wage bill only serves women who are already employed, already empowered, and are already protected against discrimination by existing legislation. The bill will have little or no impact on the majority of the poor and suffering women in our country. True empowerment is through provision of quality education to the girl child. The department priority should be to support women by monitoring service delivery and ensuring that women have access to basic services, government resources, and safety mechanisms. Honorable Ramudibe, empowering a woman starts at community level, not in the boardroom. Speaker, this department has failed dismally. It could not even monitor the implementation of existing laws and policies relating to women empowerment. How can we expect them to deliver on this massive and costly bill? It is indeed said that 20 years into democracy, the majority of women in our country are still suffering. The failure of this department is also apparent in the continued high levels of sexual violence against women, children, and sexual minorities. Bear in mind that the ANC government chose not to condemn the recently passed homophobic law in Uganda, which allows for repeat homosexual offenders to be jailed for life. What message does this send to the LGBTI persons in South Africa? Is this a government serious about gender equality and ending gender-based violence? No way. Speaker, the DA does not support this bill. Instead, we believe that the government should undertake a comprehensive audit on the impact of existing laws relating to women empowerment before introducing another redundant law that will not be implemented or address key issues. A law that might deter investors and result in another flagman's report situation. Cadre and quota employment systems without merit is a disaster. Hence the problem we have. Honorable Bula, you spent almost 2 years trying to take out a woman out of his job. And I'm so shocked when you come and stand here and say the things that you say about the DA. Empowering a woman, it's something that is very, very critical and very, very sensitive. It's not something that needs a piece of legislation that will not be implemented. We have so much that hasn't been audited in terms of the outcomes, in terms of the impact, in terms of behavioral change of women and men at the ground level. So it all starts with education, not a piece of legislation for electioneering for the ANC that is not going to be implemented. No education, no quality health, no real women and gender equality, no women empowerment without that. Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Flake.
Where do I press? Where do I press? Where do I press? Oh, I just speak. Oh. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, distinguished guests in the gallery, ladies and gentlemen. Over the past 20 years, the ANC government has been hard at work creating legislation to empower and develop the women and the girl child of South Africa. I stand here to relate one of the good stories of the ANC, that of the continuous protection and promotion of gender equality through pieces of legislation. Today, at this podium, in this House, a progressive realization of a minimum 50% representation and active participation of women in this position of decision-making and structures such as boards has been realized through the creation of the Wedge Bill as a means to protect as the means to propel South Africa forward by upholding the strategic objectives of the ANC-led government, that is non-sexism, non-racialism, united and democratic. Through this bill, the aspiration of our own Dr. Nelson Mandela will be realized when he once said, I quote, "Conditions of women of this country must be radically changed through empowerment to enable them to participate meaningfully in all aspects of life as equals with other members of the society." Today, I want to tell the whole world to know the shameful story of the DA. This party does not agree with the equal representation of women. South Africans listen to what the DA says on this clause 9 of subsection 2, which compels private business to ensure a minimum of 50% representation of women. DA says the 50% requirement contained in the bill amounts to a top-down manipulation to achieve the so-called equality. Oh, what a shameful statement. Is it not so, Honorable Lambula? They say the 50% requirement does not address the root cause of inequality in South Africa. One wonders why Madam Zille romantically kissed Madam Ahang. It is that they were staging an act of promoting gender equality according to their understanding. This is a challenge to us as the ANC to public educate and continue teaching the DA what does the principle of 50% stand for. It stands for active participation of women in decision-making bodies, not romantic kisses on the television. Honorable Lamula, you question the constitutionality and feasibility of the bill. You suggest that the bill overrides CGE mandate and duplicates it. 37 of the 41 submissions emphasize the issues of duplication. The legislation that has been adopted is not being implemented. This includes domestic violence. This bill benefits the elite and the wealthy, Honorable Lamuna, you ran Lamula. What should happen to change the lives of women? All of this has nothing. Honorable Namula, all this has nothing to do with the bill. Deal with this by this has got nothing to do with the bill. This bill is talking this Wedge Bill is talking about the empowerment and development of women. You bring all whatever you think of and put it under the bill. Go and read the objectives of the bill so that you can understand it. Honorable Musimali,
Order,
gender
honorable
equality
members,
is
please.
relegated
Order.
to the back burner by all the political parties. You then imply that the application of 50-50 principle on the political parties the bill, the Honorable Lamula, the bill empowers the minister to designate bodies and to recommend which steps should be taken to better enable women empowerment and gender equality. Predictably, the DA is opposed to the powers given to the minister. This is from the same DA which went publicly claiming that this bill does not give the minister any power to intervene to enhance the realization of the goal of gender equality. Now they say that the discretion afforded to the minister to designate and to recommend which steps to take is too wide. What we are dealing with here is a party that knows that it has opposed significant legislation that is aimed at improving the women's life. They know that they have no chance to designate a minister because they will be walloped on 7 May 2014. This pattern from the DA is all too familiar. They first rejected the bill in our committee on the basis that it lacked enforcement. But when the ANC and the other reasonable and patriotic opposition parties addressed this genuine concern, the DA then changed the tune and said the sanctions in the bill are too harsh and a bill of this nature should rather incentivize behavior in order to facilitate compliance. What utter rubbish. We know why the DA is opposed to this bill. This bill touches the interest of big capital by enforcing compliance for women empowerment and gender equality. The DA opposes for the sake of opposing. Honorable Lamula, as a member of parliament, I wonder what do you educate your constituency? What you speak is negative. What you touch is negative. What you talk about is out of tune. What you talked about is out of this bill.
Honorable Tlake.
Go and read well.
Honorable Tlake, can you just, I heard a member saying rubbish on the other side.
Yes, it's Lamula.
Did I hear correctly?
Yes, you did.
Did I hear correctly a
It's
member saying
Honorable
rubbish?
Lamula.
Can you withdraw that? Can you withdraw that?
I withdraw.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Continue, Honorable Tlake.
What you speak, Honorable Lamula, what you speak is negative. What you touch is negative. What you talk about is out of this bill. Go and read well what the objectives of this bill are. Not bring your personal beliefs here. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are not making this up. As South Africans, we are known for our good performance on protection and promotion of gender equality. It is evident both in international and regional indices, as other honorables have said. Indeed, we acknowledge challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, but there is no denying the fact that South Africa is a better place today than it was under the ancestors of DA. Is it not so, Honorable Lamula? We as women, Honorable Van der Merwe, aims and objectives suggest that current legislation is not being implemented. You say women are grossly underrepresented. Wales does not make any provision. You say Wales does not make any provision for human resource and related capacity. You say it does not address the poor quality of young women. Yet nowhere did the IFP make a submission along this line. I think for what you have said, Van der Merwe, you must tell us what does the IFP say? Because here we are today in this august house, we are making it clearly to the public that the ANC promotes and protects the women of South Africa. You come and just you come and just talk, but in what you are talking, there is no content. And when you make this submission, when you make this submission in the committee, you were saying you don't have any problem with the bill. But now today, because you are standing in front of the alliance, in front of your alliance, the DA, you come and make the submission which differs from that you submitted in the
On a
committee.
point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Point of order.
What the member is saying is not correct. In fact, throughout the committee process, I had made submissions
No.
and I articulated our concerns.
Honourable
So
Member.
what she's now saying is not the truth.
Honorable Member, that's not point of order. You can clarify that later. Please sit down.
Honorable Lamula, Honorable Miller of FF does not support the bill. You say this bill is discriminatory. We expect this from the right wing. They like their newly found allies in the form of the DA. They fail to even appreciate the need for affirmative action, which is an example of fair discrimination. Pardon? You suggest that women are equal to men and implies that there is no need for an intervention. This is scandalous. It is based on an ideology which has found new ways of protecting white privileges. It's a newfound strategy to maintain the status quo. It says do not interfere with the current order, even though they know that the status quo is a creation of their ancestors in the form of apartheid fathers. Gone are the days when the women of South Africa, gone are the days of when the women of South Africa, when it was said that the space of the women of South Africa is in the kitchen. Honorable Namula, we know you told us that you are at the exit point. Next time you will not be coming. You are going to open an NGO. That's why you are lamenting about the NGO and you are lamenting about their funding.
Speaker.
We once told you in the meeting, Comrade Honorable Lamula, that all the NGOs must be audited.
A question.
Is that a point of order?
Can I please ask a question to the member?
Honorable member, are you prepared to take a question?
I'm not prepared to take the question because I have...
Continue, honorable member. Honorable Lamula, sit. Continue, honorable member.
We know that you are going to open an NGO and you are lamenting when you put teeth in this wage bill so that the women could be given the same positions as women, as men. You are fearing the unfair. Honorable Dudley, you call for the greater commitment to the implementation of existing legislation. All the submissions were not in favor of the bill, including business and political parties. But this must not be permanent objections, even where it suggests that the amendments that we effected are inadequate.
Thank you, honorable member. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me thank all the members who supported the bill, including COPE and the MF. I want to say to ACDP, you did not attend portfolio committee meetings. You only came once. It is not true that all submissions did not support the bill. There are women there who were here, Mamuma Kubane, abafike bazikhulumela ngesizulu bathi bayayifuna le mithetho. We have also ensured, it's true what you said, that we incorporate the concerns of the public hearings in the bill. The DA's delaying tactics have failed to stall this bill, which was their aim. The DA has no policy on women empowerment and gender equality, but a cheap black woman presidential candidate strategy to come and front for the DA. Honorable Lamula must tell the women of South Africa that the DA is not committed to women empowerment, but only to big business, ensuring the rich become richer and poor women become poorer. Fighting for big capital is the priority of the DA, especially those that are in London and USA, who can help them buy a black president. I have consulted Deputy Speaker with CGE extensively on this bill. We had several meetings. I had meetings on Pepuda with the Deputy Minister of Justice, Jeff Jeffries. We have meetings, have discussed with Minister of Trade and Industry, Employment, not about Zanele, Magwaza, Triple BEE. We have discussed with Minister Oliphant on employment equity. There's no duplication here. The IFP never supported Women, Honorable Vandameva, I told you long ago, where is Zanele Magwaza? Uyabashaya manje emavotini. Usazobashaya ngomhla ka-7 kuMeyi. Freedom Front, you've never had a woman since
Honourable
1994.
Deputy Speaker.
Freedom Front Plus, where are your women?
Honourable
Deputy
Minister,
Speaker.
Honourable Minister, there's a point of order. Honourable Vandameva.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, this is the third time the Minister has given me an answer of Zanele Kamagwaza Msibi.
No,
to my
that's-
budget
that's-
vote
that's
debate,
not-
to my previous
must
statement.
Honourable Vandameva. Honourable
You
Vandameva.
must answer.
We
Honourable
engaged.
Vandameva, that's not the point of order.
Sit down. Freedom Front, IFP, they are dying dinosaurs in the South African political space. Nkosazana Zuma, Geraldine Mlekedi, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, yese baphethe umhlaba. Babephekwe la, African National Congress. Xa ndizawuhlala phansi ndibuyele kumama uMaxeke owathi in the
Honourable
social
Deputy
conditions
Speaker.
of African women and girls, we
Honourable-
will know that we have succeeded.
Honourable
Honourable
Minister,
Deputy
can
Speaker.
Yes.
Yes. Honourable
Is
Deputy
it a point
Speaker.
of order?
Yes. No, the idea is that we debate. I've asked the Minister a pertinent question with regard to the ANC, and I would really appreciate if she would answer my question. Thank you.
The ANC has 50% women, 50-50 in the list. In all their lists, they always had
Honourable Chairperson.
50%.
Honourable Chairperson. May I just...
No, Honourable Mulder, I am not going to allow that. Please. I'm not going to allow it. Please sit down. I'm not going to allow it. Honourable Mponchane, is that a point of order?
Deputy Speaker.
Order.
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Bengicela
Is that a point of order, Honourable Mponchane?
yebo
Yes.
bengicela ukubuza somlomo ukuthi
Honourable Deputy
Mhlonishwa
Speaker.
ngawuthatha.
Ucela uba ngayithatha na
Anginaso
umbuzo.
isikhathi, omama bajahile bafuna inkululeko lapha.
Honourable
Uthi
Deputy
akakaze
Speaker.
uyithathe.
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Mponchane.
Yes.
Now, who
Honourable-
is saying Honourable
Honourable
Deputy Speaker when there's somebody who's standing on the floor? Can't we just wait for that member to finish? Now, there's somebody
Point of
who's
order,
using the
Honourable
mic
Deputy
and say Honourable Deputy Speaker.
I'm raising on a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Angizwanga
No, but there's a floor. There's somebody on the floor. Please, can you wait?
awulile.
Honourable Mponchane.
Angizwanga somlomo ukuthi angawuthatha yini umbuzo.
Uthe akanawuthatha Honourable
Oh,
Mponchane.
ngiyabonga,
Enkosi.
bengazwanga somlomo.
Enkosi Mhlonitshi.
Angesabi kodwa.
Wathi umama uMaxeke ngo-1930.
Honourable Minister, please, can you sit down? There are lots of people who who have point of orders. Honourable Lamula, is it a point of order? Yes?
Why is the Women's League asking for a male to be president and
Honourable
feel that
Lamula.
it's not right for women to
Honourable Lamula, that's not a point of order. Honourable Tobias?
Honourable Speaker.
Yes.
I need to understand from your good self, is it honourable for members of parliament to point fingers at ministers in the way that the honourable member of the Freedom Front is pointing in a very patronizing way to the minister?
It's not at all. Honourable Minister, continue.
Wathi umama uMaxeke ngo-1930, we will know that we have succeeded to lift women and children up in the social life of the African when even men benefit, and thus the whole community, both white and black, benefit. Sizanikhulula Mure, honorable members, Sizanikhulula Freedom Front. The women of South Africa are here to listen and witness this memorable day in Parliament when we deliberate this piece of legislation that will truly empower them. The road ahead has been long, but when we look back, despite the many challenges, the evidence that South Africa has a good story to tell in empowering women is overwhelming. This confirms that South Africa is a better place today to live in than it has ever been. In conclusion, to the women of South Africa, I say, Go out there and vote for the party that has your interest at heart. Go out there and vote for the party that has a track record of women empowerment and gender equality, a
Deputy
legacy
Speaker,
of
may
more
I
than
address
100
you on a
years
point
of
of
women's
order?
struggles. A party
May
that
I
has
address you on a
stood
point of
the
order?
test
There's a point of
time.
order. Honorable Minister, and there's a point of order.
Yes, please.
Uh,
Deputy Speaker, the time allocated to the minister was 3 minutes.
Yes.
There is consensus that there is no transfer of time, but the minister has now been speaking for 4.5 minutes.
Thank you very
injury
much,
time.
Honorable Member. Honorable Minister, your time is up. You are about to conclude.
Yes.
Are you finished now?
Yes.
Thank
Go
you very much.
out and vote ANC. Malibongwe.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. And in concluding the debate, Honorable Kailan, when I'm sitting here, including Honorable Lamula, I hope you've noticed that I gave her more than 1 minute. So when I'm sitting here and somebody is about to conclude, there's not a single member that speaks in that podium when I'm here that I don't consider when really to cut them. So I'm not doing it to only the minister. Honorable Lamula got 1+ minutes. So I hope you'll notice everybody, please. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? I now put the questions. Those in favor will say aye. Those against, no. I think ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Speaker,
Yes.
the Democratic Alliance calls for a division.
Order, honorable members. A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 10 minutes. Yes, 10. I think that's...
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I please address you on a point of order?
Yes.
The first thing is that this thing is happening again. That the DA calls for a division, and they literally take their members, instruct even the ones who are here to go. Secondly, Deputy Speaker, I would also like to investigate Honorable Grayling, who came in here in the middle of the bells, called one lady from the opposition to please get out. And they've actually left the house. Now, this actually is tantamount to filibustering. It's not in accordance with our democracy or the intention of calling for a division and how this parliament is run. It's very reckless, and we call upon you to honestly make a ruling on this matter. Otherwise, we are running the risk of discrediting this parliament, which thousands of our people died so that we can actually have this democracy and this parliament. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker, may I have a right of response to that comment? The Democratic Alliance has got the right to protest against bad legislation.
No.
It is our democratic right.
I didn't say you must respond. Honorable Minister, I note that. I'll consider it and make a ruling later. I would like to remind members that they may only...
Of course, the Democratic Alliance, like any other party in Parliament, has the right to agree or disagree with legislation. The way in which we do it in Parliament is to vote for and against the legislation or abstain. The behaviour of the DA and the response that we've just got, again, I would like you to make a ruling on the stance that this particular party is taking in this matter. They are really calling into disrepute, not us, but them and Parliament. As the Honourable Nzimande said, this is something that was fought for and died for by millions and millions of South Africans.
I know what point of order he's addressing you on, Deputy Speaker.
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, I noted the point of order raised, which is very serious, and I said I'll make a ruling on that. I know it's not the first time that it happened. I'll make a ruling on that. Can we, at the moment, proceed with what is in front of us, our business of voting for the bill? I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. Order. The question before the House is that the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill be read a second time. Are all members in their allocated seats? Yes. Voting will now start. Those in favor of the bill being read a second time should press the yes button. Yes. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press abstain button. Have all members voted? Thank you. The voting session is now closed. Honorable members, the result of the vote is that yes, 173, no, 6, and 9 abstained. Now, the people who are not in this house, and there's a total of 2010 that have not voted. Now, who are not in the house. It means 173, have voted. We will have to postpone the decision because the 201 required in the House, if you look at the total, it's 188, the 201, which is why there was a walkout, I'm sure. Can we postpone the decision for, we will postpone the decision for this afternoon? Honorable members, on Tuesday, the 25th, during member statements, Honorable Kailan rose a point of order after Honorable Tlake had stated that we are all familiar with the DA rhetoric of fit for purpose, open opportunity society, and their confusion regarding the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, which prescribes penalties for private sector companies that do not meet the government rigid new targets for racial and gender representativity. Honorable Kalian asked whether, in terms of the rules of Parliament, a bill that is before a committee which has not yet come before the House could be discussed in a statement. In effect, Honorable Kalian asked whether Honorable Clarke has transgressed Rule 68 that deals with anticipation. At the time, I asked Honorable Tlake whether she was referring to the Employment Equity Amendment Bill or to ANC policy on gender representation. She answered that she was referring to the ANC policy of 50% female representation, and I therefore allowed her to finish the statement. The Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition, after the statement had been made, asked me to study the Hansard and to rule on the matter, and I undertook to do so. Having studied the unrevised Hansard, I now wish to rule as follows. Rule 68 states that no member shall anticipate the discussion of a matter appearing on the order paper. The minutes of proceedings of the National Assembly for the 24th October 2013 reflect that the Employment Equity Amendment Bill was passed by the House on that day and transferred to the NCOP for concurrence. The President, in fact, assented to the bill on the 14th of January 2014, and it is now a statute of Parliament. The bill, therefore, no longer on the order paper of the Assembly, and Honorable Tlake's reference to it cannot be construed as a transgression of Rule 68. Furthermore, I wish to remind honorable members that the mere mention of a bill, even if it is on the assembly order paper, does not necessarily constitute anticipation. It is only when a member discusses the bill that that duplication of parliamentary proceedings may occur, which Rule 68 is designed to prevent. Thank you very much. That is my ruling. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Science and Technology on Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Second reading debate, Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill.
Honorable Ngobo will address the House.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, Comrade Derek Anekom, Honorable Ministers and Honorable Deputy Ministers, members of the House, guests of Parliament, flowers of the nation, people of integrity, sons of the soil. Thank you very much to allow us to present this bill on the Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill. This bill, during 2012, the Department of Science and Technology embarked on a process to review the legislative provisions dealing with the operations and governance of the Science Councils reporting to the department. The said legislative review exercise was prompted by, amongst other things, delays that were experienced in the process of appointing and/or replacing members of the boards of Science Councils. The purpose of the legislative review exercise was to identify factors causing inefficiencies in the operations and governance of the Science Councils. The following factors were identified as contributing to the inefficiencies in the governance and operations of the Science Councils. 1, cumbersome processes for the appointment of members of the boards and filling of vacancies. 2, inconsistencies in the processes of the appointment and determination of service conditions for the CEOs. 3, the inconsistencies in the processes for the extension of the term of office of members of the boards and grounds for disqualification and/or termination of membership of the boards. The purpose of the bill was to streamline processes for the appointment of members of the boards or councils and filling of vacancies to enhance efficiencies, to harmonize the process for the appointment of chairpersons of the boards or councils and CEOs to ensure consistency, to provide for the dissolution and reconstitution of the boards and extension of the term of office of members of the boards to strengthen governance of the institutions. The consultation process. Comments on the bill were received from South African Council on Natural Scientific Professions, the National Research Foundation, the Academy of Science of South Africa, the Free State University. Comments generally dealt with technical issues relating to the operations of these entities and were fully addressed with relevant stakeholders. The bill actually was broadly welcomed by all stakeholders. This bill, B 2013, is tagged as a Section 75 bill. The main aim of the bill is to amend the Scientific Research Council Act of 1988, the National Research Foundation Act of 1998, the Academy of Science of South Africa Act of 2001, the Natural Scientific Professions Act of 2003, the Human Science Research Council Act of 2008, the Technology Innovation Agency Act of 2008, and the South African Space Agency Act of 2008. This bill seeks to try and harmonize the working of all these acts so that all boards and councils are appointed in the same way or terminated their service on the same way. I appeal therefore to the House to move forward together and to move South Africa forward and to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Water and Environmental Affairs on National Environmental Management Protected Areas Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the bill be adopted.
With Honourable Deputy Chief Whip dealing with the report.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Honourable members, let me return to the fourth order on the bottle. It deals, and I'll ask the Secretary to read the fifth order again.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Water and Environmental Affairs on National Environmental Management Protected Areas Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honourable Chair, I move that the bill be passed.
Honourable Chief will be dealing with the report before we get to the bill.
Okay, I move that the report be adopted.
Honourable members, just give us a minute to sort out the issue of the report and the bill. Are we now at the correct point, which is the fifth order, dealing with the report of the Portfolio Committee on Water and Environmental Affairs? Honourable Chief Whip.
Now that I've been corrected, I move that the report be noted.
The motion is that the report be noted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. We now get to the sixth order. The sixth order is the decision of question on the second reading of the National Environmental Management Protected Areas Amendment Bill. Members will recall that the House debated the bill on the 5th of November 2013, after which the bill was recommitted to the committee for further consideration. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
National Environmental Management Protected Areas Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the seventh and eighth orders.
Consideration of Labour Relations Amendment Bill and report of Portfolio Committee on Labour thereon. Consideration of Employment Services Bill and report of Portfolio Committee on Labour thereon.
Honourable members, we have not received a speaking list for the seventh and the eighth orders. However, I call upon the chairperson of the committee, the Honourable Chabaleng, who will introduce the reports. The Honourable Chabaleng.
Honourable Speaker.
Order, honourable members. Proceed, honourable member.
Thank you very much. The Portfolio Committee on Labour received the amendments from the NCOP, and we actually had some disagreements with the NCOP on some of the amendments. And we decided to stick to what we presented earlier in the House. That is Section 9A and D will remain as they are. I thank you. And that the opposition, the DA, objected to those amendments. Thank you. I don't have the papers.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, who will move a motion on the Labour Relations Amendment Bill. The Honourable Chief Whip.
Honorable Chair, I move that the bill be adopted, be passed.
The motion is that the Labour Relations Amendment Bill, as amendment, be passed. Are there any objections? I've received requests for declarations or vote. I will now allow for up to 3 minutes, one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. Order, honourable members.
Honourable House Chair, the DA does not support the Labour Relations Amendment Bill. Following protracted discussion in the committee and a number of proposed changes from the NCOP, the bill in its current form does not create market stability and does little to reduce the disproportionate power of big labour unions, which prohibits the creation of real growth. The bill no longer provides for the democratization of labour relations through secret balloting before a strike, as proposed by the Department of Labour in the original version of the bill. In removing this requirement, the ANC in Parliament has sought to entrench the undemocratic nature of South Africa's existing labour relations framework, which only serves the interests of union bosses instead of workers. The introduction of secret balloting would have inhibited union bosses from engaging in strike action at a whim. Balloting would strike a balance between workers' constitutional right to strike and the need to grow the economy and create jobs. Rampant and prolonged strike action, such as in the 2-month strike in the mining sector, results in lost production hours, threatened jobs, and signals to both foreign and domestic investors that South Africa is an unstable and high-risk economic environment. In Parliament, President Zuma's ANC has acted irresponsibly by failing to introduce legislation benefiting South Africa's poor and unemployed. Further, the bill limits the term of temporary employment services governing labour broking to 3 months after initially providing for a 6-month limit. This puts thousands of jobs at risk. The bill needed to improve the ease of hiring employees, easing the burden of labour regulations that inhibit good job creation in the small business sector, reduce high transactional costs associated with dismissal, and create greater recognition for temporary work. This bill will continue to condemn thousands to unemployment and poverty. The DA cannot support the bill.
The ID.
ID. Honourable Chair, although the committee was able to agree on certain cosmetic aspects of the Labour Relations Amendment Bill, there are still critical shortcomings at the core of this bill. This bill is nothing more than an ANC ploy to appease unions that have propped up President Zuma like COSATU ahead of this year's election. In terms of our labour relations regime, it's business as usual since the bill fails to adequately address often protracted labour unrest within the South African economy. Given the recent number of violent strikes in South Africa and the inability of unions to control their supporters, the free rein this bill provides unions with will kill jobs and endanger the lives of strike participants and members of the public. Workers remain the most vulnerable victims of the reckless industrial action that this bill promotes, with the latest departmental figures showing that 45 of the 99 strikes recorded were unprotected and that wages lost skyrocketed by 500% to 6.7 billion rand. The bill fails to introduce secret balloting as an effective mechanism to hand power back to workers before the commencement of a strike. Protracted strike action ultimately hurts us all, hampering direct investment into some of the most vital industries in the South African economy and prohibiting the creation of jobs. Economic growth cannot flourish in a hostile business environment. We recognize the workers' rights to engage in lawful and peaceful strike action, but believe a balance must be struck between protecting the rights of workers and to ensure stable economic growth that creates jobs. We believe jobs can be created through creating a flexible labor regime that bolsters the small business sector, equipping South Africans with an education that gives job seekers marketable skills, and democratizing wage negotiations. This is the only way to deliver jobs to South Africa's poor and unemployed. For the reasons advanced above, the ID cannot support the bill. I thank you.
Go.
Chairperson, this bill is coming from the NCOP back to this House. This bill was passed by this House and taken to the NCOP. This bill is a product of interaction between labor, state, government, and employers at NEDLEC. The department brought this bill here, not the opposition, not COPE. The NCOP, in discussing this bill, recommended that the clause 9C and D be omitted on the basis of saying that one, it is unconstitutional, and two, costs should not be allowed to interfere with the right to strike. COPE believes that the NCOP and the ANC are wrong because clause 9C and D talks about both strikes and lockouts. And COPE believes that the right to strike or lockout are not absolute rights. The proposed clauses by the department and not by COPE and the minister provide for consequences and empower the cost to bring a strike to an end or production to an end when any of the parties don't respect picketing rules. The court can only rule after both parties have been given an opportunity to present their case. And therefore, none of the parties can unilaterally decide to either bring a strike to an end or production to an end. As far as I'm concerned, this clause brings consequences for unruly behavior by unions and underhand activities by the employers. On the other hand, COPE support the inclusion of clause 9, to which the DA and ID has indicated disagreement, because strikes are about solidarity. And if workers on strike cannot be supported by members of communities, they will have no weapon to enforce the strike. A union involved in the strike must take responsibility concerning the actions of their members and supporters. And lastly, Chairperson, the issue of balloting is vital. It's important that workers should, at the end of the day, have the right to decide whether they want to go on strike or not. It cannot be the leadership which makes the decision of whether workers must go on strike or not. As a result, COPE will not support this bill.
Are there any further declarations? The ANC.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The ANC, as the only organization that came with these amendments and also changed the old labor relations in the country in 1995, supported the bill. The parties, Chairperson, that came and made declaration here, they didn't read correctly the bill vis-a-vis the principal act. All what they're saying on strikes, strikes are in terms of Section 64 of the Labor Relations Act. There's a procedure that has to be followed. Those strikes are strikes in terms of the law as a result of collective bargaining, which the labor legislations do promote collective bargaining. Now, if then there will be arguments to say there has to be ballot before a strike, our understanding is that trade unions are managed in terms of their constitutions, and trade unions, in fact, even the Labor Relations Act, respect that. There are trade unions which their constitutions demand a ballot before a strike. There are trade unions which demand that if a strike will be a response to collective bargaining, the structures of those trade unions will take decisions. That's what is happening. The issue, Chairperson, of the amendments, from the NCOP, which Cope made reference to, 9C and 9D. Those are very clear, and I like the argument that has been advanced by the Congress of the People to say the court of law can make decisions on anything that has been related to those courts to make such decisions. So there is no need of clause C and clause D, because if you look at D talks to replacement labor, which is taken care of in the Labor Relations Act in terms of Section 76. So therefore, you cannot then try to repeat what is on Section 76 under Section 69, which has to deal with picketing. The ANC supports the bill.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any further declarations? No further declarations. Honourable Members, I want to put the question again in terms of the Labour Relations Amendment Bill. Are there any objections to the Chief Whip's motion that the Labour Relations Amendment Bill as amendment be passed? Honourable Chief Whip.
Chairperson, I move that the two orders stand down for this afternoon.
There's a request from the Chief Whip that the decision on Order 7, Honourable Member, order, that the decision stand over until this afternoon. In terms of Rule 76, I will allow that to happen. So the questions will be dealt with this afternoon. We now get to the 9th order of the day. The Secretary will read the 9th order.
Consideration of South African Language Practitioners Council Bill and report of Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture thereon.
The Chairperson of the committee, the Honourable Sunduza, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairperson. As you know, that in South Africa, language is a very contested terrain, and the ANC is the only party that ensures that the languages that are indigenous are underway to be recognized in South Africa. I must say that from the beginning, before I finish, is that the parties agreed anonymously on this bill, and I don't expect any objections at this point in time because we agreed on them. One of the issues that I want to raise is that, as you all know, that the bill is to organize language practitioners into one body in the country, develop a code of conduct by which practitioners will work, the regulation and registration and training, accreditation and provision of language service to the public. So this bill represents both the interest of the practitioners and the client to ensure that practitioners are not exploited in any sector, because, as you know, many practitioners that are language practitioners, because they are undermined or always eliminated because of certain qualifications. But now this gives the opportunity, even those with nodal content and even those with indigenous language knowledge without any formal qualification, to be accredited by the minister. So it also provides a work for those who are very at disadvantages in communities. As I explained when we debated the bill last year, that you find that in communities, especially there are women who would come and interpret for a doctor who cannot speak that language in that certain community. But you find that they are doing it for free and without being paid, and we find that as exploitation. I want to further to state that the bill was debated here. It went to NCOP, and there were amendments that were made as it is tagged as a Section 75 bill. And then we all agreed on the amendments. It came back to the to the N8, came back to the committee, and all parties agreed, and that the bill can be passed. Further, I just want to say that, shortly to say that I just want to thank you, the members of the committee, for their inputs on this bill, and I highly request that the House considers this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honourable Chairperson, I move that the bill as amended be passed.
The motion is that the bill as amended be passed. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The bill will be sent to the President for assent. Honourable members, I will now suspend proceedings until 2 p.m. this afternoon and wish to remind members that notices of motion and motions without notice will be taken at 2 this afternoon. Business is thus suspended.